So should I start?
Yes, please.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's a little bit odd that I'm speaking to a screen, but I guess that everyone is now getting used to this strange way of speaking to themselves. But anyway, thank you very much for attending this session. I hope you find it useful and we can share some ideas together about a very important topic, which is how to publish research papers in high-impact journals. As I just mentioned to Rahim, that if anyone needs to ask anything, please feel free to ask immediately. You don't need to wait until the end of the session. I always prefer that approach rather than someone keep remembering his question or her question until the end of the session and get consumed by the idea that you want to ask it. So can just immediately ask it. I think that would be much better. I've given a similar talk last year, and I was invited by the College of Graduate Studies to give this talk. And when Dr. Ali Marzouk asked me to give this talk on how to publish in a high-impact journal, my first answer was, I wish I knew. And to be honest, I'm humbled to stand before you today and speak about this. But I can fairly say that I've been in the business for some time. I've seen it all. And hopefully the experience that I've gone through, I can convey some of the lessons I learned, which may help, especially new researchers at the beginning of their research career, to avoid mistakes that I have done and proceed with their research career, develop their portfolio, and have a successful research career. So if I start by saying why this thing is important. The slides are not moving for some reason. Just 1 second, let me see what's happening. Okay, universities are mainly concerned with two things, conveying developed science, and at the same time, they're also involved in discovering and developing new knowledge. Now, the level of challenge of conveying already developed knowledge is much less compared to the challenges and the what it requires from a researcher to develop his or her own knowledge. Besides that, dissemination of these new findings plays a major role in the advancement of science. So for those reasons, reputations of universities relies strongly on the reputation of the faculty members, which is based on their research productivity. How much new knowledge have they developed? Just to make this idea clearer, I'm not undermining the significance of teaching and the effort a faculty member or an academician need to put into teaching. However, the level of challenge, as I mentioned earlier, is not even close to that of research. So if, for example, you've given me the time and the resources to teach, I can teach anything as long as it's in my field. I can read the material, I can understand it, and then I can convey it. Of course, my ability to convey and explain the ideas may not be the same like anyone else, and that differs, and these are skills that differs from one individual to another, but still I can do it. However, if you give me the resources and the time and ask me to publish in a Nature journal, for example, I may spend my entire life and not be able to do that. So that's because coming up with new knowledge requires the brightness of the mind to be in a different level, to come up with something new that nobody else have thought of, and to advance the knowledge and the science based on that. So for that reason, the reputation of a faculty member is built around his research productivity and how much new knowledge and new science he or she has developed. When you speak about research productivity, the name of the game is the publication in journals. So everything else are usually inputs to bring you to this major output, which is to publish in journals. So journal publication is the main component of the research productivity. Some people confuse between conference publications and journal publications. And I would like just to stand for a few slides on this because I had this discussion with many people, and maybe my opinion may not be in agreement with everyone else in every other field, but I'm going to speak about my own opinion in my field and what I believe is right. In my opinion, conferences are not meant for publication. If one wants to publish something, then journals are the place to do so. I put some of the major publishing houses on the right, like Springer Nature, Wiley, Elsevier, Springer, Taylors and Francis, and AAS. Those are some of the biggest publishing groups that publish a number of journals. So if we agree that results can be published only once, and I'll mention this now, why you are not allowed to publish results twice. So why someone may choose to publish his or her work in a conference, even if it is a good conference. And I'm speaking about publishing a full paper in a conference. So if I'm going to publish my result once, might as well publish it in a place where it will be more visible to people, it can attract more citations, and it has a more weight for my record as a researcher. So if that's good, why not to publish it in a journal? And that's the question that always you should ask yourself. If my work is good, why should I waste it in a conference? Why don't I publish it in a journal? And if I choose to publish it in a conference, still the question is this work good enough to be published in a journal? Should it be given the chance? Conferences are not meant for publication, as I mentioned. There's no review process of any conference that I'm aware of that will reach or even be close to the level of the review of any good journal. And for that reason, the results that you present in a conference paper is regarded not very reliable compared to the results that you put in a research paper or in a journal article. You can publish immature work in a conference. You can publish wrong work in a conference because the idea, as I mentioned, is not to publish, but for other reasons, as I explained. I just put a comment here. As far as I'm concerned, I have never received any rejection from any conference I applied for. Even the top conferences, merely the reviewers' comments were all cosmetic, and as long as your paper is in the field of the conference, most probably it's going to be accepted. So it doesn't measure the quality of the work if it's going to be accepted anywhere. Unlike papers, which I have experienced a large number of rejections, and it requires modifications and modifications of the work until it gains the approval of the reviewers and it gets published. Therefore, conference publications are usually not considered in promotion or given any weight as compared to journal publication in any evaluation. So I can publish any number of conference papers, but I cannot publish any number of journal papers. And that's why the weight of a publication in a journal paper is more important. In addition to that, citations usually much higher in papers published in journals compared to papers published in conferences. And for you as a researcher, your reputation is based on the citations that your publications attracts. And if the number of citations, if number of publications starts to increase and the number of citations does not follow, this will not look good in your portfolio. And at the end of the day, what I'm trying to help you now is to build up a strong portfolio for yourself that is solid and that you could be proud of. So the number of citations per publications will start to be reducing if you start to publish a lot in conferences. So you cannot publish a work in a conference and then extend it or improve it and submit it again for a journal. So some people I've spoken to, they say we publish a paper in conference, then we expand it or we build on it, and then we publish it in a journal. I think that's a bad idea for two reasons. The first and most important one is the novelty. Novelty, and I'll touch on that soon. Novelty is the main criterion, if not the only criterion for the acceptance for publication in a journal. So if you publish your work in a conference, you have burned the idea. And in this case, the idea is rendered not novel, and you jeopardize your chances of being publishing the work in a journal. So why would you lose that chance by publishing that work in a conference? Copyright is another important thing. You cannot expand on a work. You need another type of work, because the data that you publish in a conference proceeding should not be published again. You cannot publish it again. You cannot expand on it. You need a new set of results. Publishing pieces of work in conferences and then combining them in one paper and submit it to a journal is therefore not acceptable, because that, again, I've heard from people where they say, we publish bits and pieces in different conferences, then we combine them together in one comprehensive paper, and then we publish it in a journal. This is, again, not acceptable for the same reason. I'll just tell you an incident that happened to me. I managed to publish a book, an authored book, and in that book, I wanted to include some of results from previous literature. Even mine, I need to get permission to every single graph or table I need to include in the book, and I even needed to pay for the publishing houses to reuse the data, even if they were mine. But I don't own them anymore. They are the ownership of the ownership of those tables and graphs are at the end of the publishing houses. I'll give you examples of what you sign on in a copyright form when you publish a paper. And these are some of the examples, but every publishing house, when you publish a paper, they ask you to sign a copyright, and that's what is written. For example, in PLOS ONE, which is one of the prominent journals, it says, PLOS ONE does not accept publication studies that have already been published in whole or in part. And that's the important point here, in whole or in part. Elsewhere in a peer-reviewed literature, all figures included in the manuscript should be original and should not have been published in any previous publication. You sign on what is written. What I'm reading right now is something you sign on when you publish. In Scientific Report, which is a Nature publisher, it says when you submit a manuscript, we will take it to imply that the manuscript has not already been published or submitted elsewhere. If similar or related work has been published or submitted elsewhere, then you must provide a copy with the submitted manuscript. The Elsevier, which is one of the most prominent publishing houses, in all their copyright forms, they say the submitted material has not been published in whole or in part elsewhere. So that closes all the door on saying we collect from different publications and we have one big one, or we expand on it. And based on that, I've made up my opinion. And this is, again, as I'm saying, this is my own opinion for my field of research, and maybe some other people from other fields may disagree with it. Conferences are very important, but they are not places to publish. They are forums of discussion and exchange of ideas. So when you go there to express your ideas, whether they are ready, whether they are complete, whether you want to work on it, and you discuss it with a large audience, you disseminate the idea that you have already come up with. I usually give the example of Einstein, who was invited for several conferences. Do you expect that he's publishing in those conferences, or he was speaking about something he has already published? So he's going there to express his ideas, to explain what he has done, to hear feedback from people. And that's the nice thing about conferences. So they are not something marginal, they are very important, but they are not places to publish. I myself prefer to present my papers in good conferences and where only abstract are published. So in the abstract is just you speak about what you want to talk about, but there are no publications here. So that I can still publish the work in a reputed journal later, or I can present the work that I've already published. I mean, there is no publications here. I've already published the work, I go and speak about it, and I discuss it with people. We should refrain from splitting up a single study into several parts to increase the quantity of the submissions. This is also known as salami publishing or slicing publishing. So you break the work into smaller pieces. All those may increase the quantity of your publication, but as an overall portfolio for yourself, it may not look good. Okay, so it all comes to this. The idea is for you to build a research record for yourself And this research record, something that will always stay with you and your reputation will be based on it. There are a few things that you need to take into consideration when you think about building your career portfolio, your research portfolio as a young researcher. Yes, Halima, please.
Yes, Halima, you can speak.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Mr. Sulaiman, for your valuable information, actually. I'm actually a PhD student in education and leadership. And of course, I'm highly interested in research and publishing, articles. The question is, when you just explained now that you don't advise based on very valid reasons to publish any article at the beginning at any conference, because that will lose its unique or like it will be a burnt out idea, as you said. Now, if we reverse the scenario now, if I have published my article in any journal, and as you said, we need to sign on a copyright. So do they allow us to publish it back again to the conference? Is it allowed? Is it one of the terms or conditions that I'm signing on?
Yeah, no, you cannot publish it again in a conference proceeding. You need to go to conferences where there are no publications involved in it. So the conference, if it has publishing or if it is publishing a proceeding, then you cannot publish it again there. But there are many conferences that publishes books of abstracts only. And these books of abstracts will just put the title and what's your talk is all about. So the idea is to go there and present your work. There are no publication involved in them. And in this case, you are not breaching the contract that you signed with the journal. Otherwise, you are not allowed to do that. Both ways are not allowed.
So what you mean is I can just share the abstract of my publication and not the whole research or the article, right?
Absolutely. There are many conferences. Actually, most of the top conferences now only publishes a book of abstract for this particular reason. So to allow you either to present a work that you have already published or to speak about a work that you plan to publish in the future. So, right. So you are not jeopardizing your chances of publishing in a journal. And they realize the difference between what is a conference for and what is a publishing for. So they don't publish any paper. And I remember once I had a paper that I presented a talk, which was just a book of abstract, and I presented the idea, and then I worked on it and I published the paper. One of the reviewers did that, and he sent back saying that I found similar abstract in that conference. So I had to ask the conference to send the reviewer confirmation that there were no data published anywhere. It was only presentations, and there is no any kind of publication involved, and then they accepted the publication of the paper.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Sulaiman.
You're welcome. But anyway, I mean, if you have a work that you do not mind publishing in a conference, you can do that. But just bear in mind that these publications, first of all, will not attract many citations on one hand, and secondly, it will make you lose the chances of publishing it in a journal. But the decision is entirely up to you whether you want to publish in a conference or not. But the bottom line is what you publish in a conference, you cannot republish it again. That's the thing that you need to put in mind. Okay, so when we come back to the portfolio that you want to build, your research portfolio, it's always quality and quantity comes into question. In my opinion, again, and most of what I'm going to say are actually opinions, and you may find people disagreeing with, but I'm going to put why I believe those are important. First of all, in my opinion, it is better to publish one paper in a good journal than to publish 10 poor papers in poor journals. The reason for that, because the significance of a good work is diluted among those bad works. So if you publish only one good work, it will shout as a one good work. If you publish the same good work and 9 other bad works, this good work will, the impact of it will be diluted with the other bad work. And in that case, you need to keep your record with only outstanding work published in very reputed journals, and try to avoid publishing in low quality journals. Most of the people I come across, they say the same thing. I have some publications, if Times returned back, I would not have published them, including myself. And that's because when you are young and eager to publish, you start to try to publish anything. But once you start to mature in your research, you look back at those publications, say, if I've spent more time and effort and developed the work and make it better, I could have published a much better work than this. And that's what I would like you to know and be aware of at early stage of your career. Don't rush into publications. They will come. Try to be very selective in what you publish. And at the end, you will avoid those that, you will avoid the time where you can look back and say, I wish I did not publish that paper. This is another thing. It is always better to have a clear focus of your research direction. And 5 years, 10 years from now, you need to have a clear, unique thing to distinguish you from others that identifies your research and what is you known for. If you're gonna publish bits and pieces from every here and there, and this guy you work with him and that guy you work with him, and there is no clear focus in your research, then that will be a negative thing in your portfolio. And this is very easy. Now, I'll speak about SCOPUS soon, and Web of Science, and other ways of, these are public information. It's not hidden. Anyone can search for me or anyone else and find the entire research portfolio, the focus, where he's publishing in, what kind of journals he or she are publishing in, and so on. So you need to have clear focus of your research, and that focus makes you distinguished and identify you in that field. People are looking into someone who knows everything about something rather than someone who knows something about everything. You need to be, specialization is the idea here. And that comes from focus of research. And the more you focus on your research, the deeper you can go and into it, and the better outcome that can come out from it. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have the freedom to think outside what you are working on, but still your focus should be clear. Even if you manage to have an idea and you work on something outside your mainstream work, still your portfolio should show at least 80% of your outcome in a certain field. That is your specialization, and that's what your strength point about, and that's your uniqueness. If you cannot in 5, 10 years say my research is unique in this, then you have wasted those 10 years. It's difficult for now to say what's your specialization, but 5 to 10 years, they should be very clear for you. And it should reflect on your portfolio again. Your work should stand out from the others, and that's how you attract the attention of people. That's how people start to cite your work. If you are just doing the norms, then the chances of people picking up your work is very low. International collaboration also attracts attention. It's a well-known fact that publications that include researchers from different parts of the world attract citations much higher than those who are working in a regional collaboration or even institutional collaboration. You need to reach out to people and advertise your work, for your work. There's many venues that you can go to and promote your work and make people know about it, and show the good thing that you've done so people can read it and cite it, and that's what makes your reputation. So if I come to the preparation of the paper, I will go through 4 different steps before article preparation, the article preparation itself, article publishing, and after article publishing. So before you prepare the article, you should always ask yourself, am I ready to publish? Do I have something worth publishing? Does the work add enough existing knowledge, or still I need to do more to know more? Is this of interest to others in the field, or it is marginal, not very important? Should I invest time and effort in working on it or not? These all questions should be asked before you start thinking of publishing. Novelty versus originality. Now, this is something that needs to be clear for everyone. High quality journals do not publish work that does not have clear novelty aspects and add to the existing knowledge. Now, there is a difference between originality and novelty. Originality is that you are doing a work which has already been done, but you are doing it on something that has never been done on before. For example, if a test is done on material X, you've done the same test on material Y. Nobody has ever done the same test on material Y. This is considered an original work, but it's not novel because you did not add anything new to it. It's just repeating what other people have done. So if you have, for example, extracted oil, or people extracted oil from different seeds, you say, okay, I want to extract it from another type of seed, which nobody has done it. This is still original work, but it's not considered novel. Novel is something that you add to science, some new things that has not existed before and you add. And good journals demand that you have novelty in your work, not simply originality. Some journals, however, clearly say that they accept original work. And Scientific Report is one I've just mentioned earlier, clearly state that. They don't demand novelty, just original work is enough to publish. But the question lies at your end, do you want that or not? Do you want to publish just original work, or you want to produce novel work that is distinguished and goes into the top journals? So everything I'm going to speak about comes down to quality. So if you look at the paper I'm putting here, this is the paper published in Nature in 1953. I guess this thing is blocking the year. I think it's 1953. And this is the journal that, the paper that describes the DNA structure. You can see that the paper is in Nature. It's the top journal ever. And you'll notice that it is a one-page only. So it doesn't take a lot to publish a very good work. If you have an exceptional work, it will be published in the top journals. So it's a one-page journal paper. So everything I want to speak about how to present and the quality of presentation it comes secondary after the quality of the work. And at the bottom line, the quality of the work determines whether you're going to publish in a good journal or not. So the first step in order to get the paper published is to convince the editor to accept sending the paper for reviewing. And you need to know what the editors ask so that you can answer them in your paper. So they will look into good presentation. Is it a well-written story? You should always, when you present your ideas, to have a logical sequence. And in this case, the readers can follow up with what's happening. They can easily understand, and you need to make the reader look forward to the next thing you want to say, and then you throw it at them. Not suddenly you're speaking about something, he doesn't know why you jumped into that, or why did you go from this. So the logical sequence is a very important thing. And you need, as I mentioned, to say it as a story and get the reader engaged in what you're trying to say. A clear, useful, and exciting message should come out from that paper. So the editor will look at it and say, does it have that or not? Presented and constructed in a logical manner, allowing readers to easily grasp the significance. It should be consistent with the scope of the journal. So if he finds, the editor, that your paper doesn't go with the scope of the journal, he will reject it immediately and will not send it to reviewing. It demonstrates broad interest to readership, and the question that the editor will ask himself, will this work attract citations or not? Because the citations that your paper attracts increase the impact of the journal, and the editors are seeking to improve the impact of their journals. So that comes from the quality of the papers they publish in their journals. and they will ask themselves, will it attract citations or not? And then based on that, they will decide whether to send it to reviewing or not. The quality, which is the significance and novelty, which I just mentioned, another thing that the editor will look at, and the good science, well planned and well executed. If the work, if the experiments are not robust and not sound, then the editor may question the quality, the reliability of those results, and can choose not to pass it to the reviewers because of that. Are there any questions from anyone? I can see, or I should continue.
I don't think we have any questions. If you have any questions, please raise your hands or write in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so when you publish, there are three types of publications that you can send your papers to. Either it's a full research article, and that's the one that I will be speaking about. And this is, you have a complete and comprehensive research that you want to publish. Once you complete everything, you reach a conclusion, you have all the elements of the paper ready, then you can send for full research article. There's something called letters or short communications, and these are usually when you found a breakthrough and you want to own the idea, because you know that research is a race. I mean, what you are thinking of, maybe hundreds of people are thinking of as well. So if you manage to beat them into finding the outcome, and you don't want to wait until you measure all the parameters and all the things around it and come up with a complete paper, you just want to own the idea, you can send it in a short communication, which is basically you just show the idea, what they call it, they have a name for that, just 1 second. Proof of concept. You have the proof of concepts and you can just send it. And in this case, the publication will be much faster, but it's a short, and then you can build on it later and look into everything around it. Review paper is another important publication. And there is, again, misunderstanding of what is a review paper. And when I discuss this with other people, I can see different opinions, and I may not agree with all of them when it comes to review paper. Now, I'm very concerned about research productivity and measurement of research outcome. It's a passion I have. I really look into it, and I read a lot about it. That's why I have lots of discussions with people about it, and that's why I keep on saying I've discussed it with people. Review papers are not a collection of past work or summary of everyone else's work in that particular field. This can be done in a book chapter. So if you're asked to write a book chapter, you don't need to add anything. You just say you cover the topic from all angles, you speak about everyone and what they've done, and that's basically it. However, when it comes to review paper, similar to what is in research article, you need to add to science. The addition to science in a research article is in the results, the experimental results, and the interpretation of the experimental results. However, the addition to science in a review paper is the outcomes or the conclusions that you reach by comparing different papers that you cannot reach from every paper individually. So I can reach a finding, I can reach an addition to science, I can reach a level of knowledge that is not possible from the isolated papers. But combining them together, comparing them together, looking at all those papers together, you can reach a conclusion. You did not do any experiment, you are reviewing all those, but you have a critique of those, and you have a critical discussion that will bring you to reach conclusions based on the comparison of all those papers. It will show where are the rooms of improvement that is needed in each one of those works. So if you don't have that, if you don't have these comparisons between the different papers and reach that conclusion, your review paper is not complete. So you don't go from one paper to one paper to one paper to one paper, but an idea that you cover it from every angle, then another idea, you cover it from every angle, and you reach finding, as I mentioned, that you cannot reach from individual papers. And that's why review papers are regarded very high, similar to full research article. And someone may say, how come a review article is regarded as a normal research article or full research article while there are no experiments that were done. And that's the reason for the significance of a review article. Co-authorship is something that you need to think of when you decide about who's going to be involved in that publication that you intend to do. And here, ethics should play a major part. You should only include people who deserve to be on the paper. And the order of those authors and their role on the paper should be clear. So I do not include anyone unless their work is justifies their inclusion in the paper. It's not because they are my friend, it's not because I want them later on to put my name on their paper. All these reasons should be avoided. You should include only the people who really contributed in the work. And actually now, most journals require a statement of contribution of authors. And for an author to be included, or for a person to be a co-author, he or she needs to contribute to 2 of those keywords, which are the contributing keywords, at least 2 of them. So either the data curation or the and paper writing, they need to be 2. Conceptualization and something else, and so on. And they add those at the end of the paper to identify the contributions of the authors. Actually, there are some movements now, because many people are using this trick of put my name and I put your name. They are asking not to include the people, all the authors as co-authors, but to identify them based on their contribution. So your name will not be a co-author, your name will be your contribution on that. It's yet to be implemented. Right now, most of the journals add that author contribution, but I can see it in the future happening, that the paper will not have co-authors, but contributors, and those contributors will have clear contribution in each one of them. So also there's 2 identified authors in a paper which are different than the co-authors, which are the first author and the corresponding author. The first author is understood to be the person who executed the work and done most of the writing, while the corresponding author is the owner of the idea and the manager of the project. So in general, the first author could be the student and the corresponding author may be the supervisor, or if you are 2 collaborators together, the person who come up with the idea and manage the work is the corresponding author. He could be the same, he could be the first author as well, but they could be different as well. And those are different than the rest of the corresponding authors. Sorry, the rest of the co-authors. So this is something that you cannot take lightly. Try to be very transparent and look into the ethical values when you choose who are the ones who are gonna be on the paper. You can see people say, if you want to use my equipment, you must put me as a co-author. All sorts of things that we come across, and all these you need to fight and have your own standards in who's gonna be on your paper. The main blocks of a paper consists of title, abstract, and keywords, and those are the advertisements for your work, and they must be catchy and attractive. Then there will be the introduction, the methods, and result and discussion, and this is the full story of your work. They must be clear, sound, with logical sequence. And there is the context, which is the conclusion, acknowledgement, references, and supporting material. This makes the readers feel the benefit from reading the article. So if I read the article, or from the conclusion, it says, yeah, that's what I get out of reading this particular piece. So when you build your paper, you build it from downward upward. So you start with your results and your figures and tables. You go after that to write the methods and your results and discussions. Then you add the conclusion and introduction. And finally, you put your title, abstract, and keyword. So you go from as if you are building a wall. The title should be concise identification of the main issues of the paper that attracts readers. Now it should be short, interesting, catchy titles are often better cited. So try to avoid very long titles that says the entire story. Have it some kind of attractive title that will make the reader read the paper in order to know what's happening. But if you can say, finding that increasing the temperature will result in decreasing whatever, that's not a good title because that says the story. So reading that, I know what it's all this paper about. But try to have it catchy. Try to have it something that makes people say, oh, I want to read what is there. So the first thing a reader will look at is the title. So if you lose them by having a title which is not attractive, then most probably they will not read your paper. The keywords should be carefully chosen because they will go into the search enhancement engine. So it's used in indexing and abstracting services, should be again specific and use buzzwords that attracts people. So all those new trends, try to always have them in your keywords to increase the chances of your paper being found and extracted. So among all those papers which are there, your papers need to stand out, and the keyword will definitely help, because when someone searches a word, they will look into the keywords, and if it is in your paper, it will appear for them in their search engine. The abstract is again something that most people will read before deciding to read the paper or not. So this should be very attractive again, and it should give a brief idea about the paper that the readers will decide whether this is something I want to cite or something I'm not going to cite. So it should be clear and easy to read. What is new in the paper and why this thing is important. This is the bottom line that you need the message from your abstract. So for example, again, I'm just putting this as an example. You don't have to follow it literally. You put one sentence to explain the problem. What's the problem that you are tackling? One or two sentences about the objective and the significance of this problem. Why is it important? Why people need to investigate what you are investigating? You speak about what methodology you followed. One or two sentences about what you have done to overcome those problems. Your main findings. What did you find out of all this? And one sentence about your conclusion. So basically, it is a summary of all the work infused shouting statements about the significance, the methodology, the main results, and the conclusion out of it. So if a person reads the abstract, most of the people read abstracts before they decide whether they're going to cite the paper or not. The introduction again, you can see people, I've come across different papers where people write introduction in a way that is not very attractive to me as a reader. When I find the first statement of an introduction to be a common knowledge, that shuts me down immediately. So if I read an introduction and it says that, for example, smoking causes cancer, or greenhouse gases results in global warming, or any of those well-known knowledge. I mean, yeah, you are not doing your research because CO2 gases causes greenhouse effect. You are doing the research because there is something missing that you want to solve. Go directly to what you are tackling and speak about it. Those introduction and long, well-known things should be avoided. What's the problem? Why you are tackling it? And what is your main approach to reach it? Explain the problem, why this problem is important, and the aims of the study. Mention existing solutions and what are the limitations of those existing solutions. So this is the problem. This is what people have been trying to do. However, those people are doing it and they are not getting the results they want because of this. Then I'm gonna approach it in a different way. How are you gonna approach it? And explain clearly the novelty of your work. Maybe I'm speak about myself when I say I did that or I'm gonna do this. In your introduction or throughout the paper, always use past tense passive voice. Don't use we did that, we did this, they did that, they did this. Because when you mention we did that, you are emphasizing that you have done it. But the emphasis should be on what has been done rather than who has done it. So when you say the temperature was found to increase, better than saying John found that the temperature results in increasing whatever. Because when you say John found it, you want to say that it's John, not someone else. But who cares? It's John or who else? As long as we know that it was found that the temperature results in increasing whatever. So it should always be a passive voice. You move to the methods, and the method should be described in details, but at the same time concise, not lots of jargon. That will allow repetition of the experiments that results in your same results. So people need to read your paper. If they find anything vague, it may question, why are you trying to hide that? You should be very clear in your methodology that allows people to repeat it and get your same results. That's the idea, that's the message that you want to say. I'm doing those experiments, do it the same, you get my same results. Do not describe previously published procedures, but cite them clearly. If you are using a standard procedure to measure something, no need to detail it. You can just say the method is described in whatever reference, and people can go there and read the details of it. Identify the equipment and the material used. This is again so that you can be 100% clear about what you are doing. So the equipment that you used, what model, what conditions, what temperatures, everything related to that instrument should be clearly explained. The materials, the purity of the material, what did you use, where you got them from, what's their purity, will also be specified so that people, if they want to get your same results, should use the same information. Do not forget to present control samples and reference tests. This is something that students tend to forget. If I want to measure the effect of something, I start to put that, let's say a catalyst, I start to put the catalyst and see the effect of it on the reaction. But they forget to test it without the catalyst. I mean, how could you verify that these are because of the catalyst, not because of something else? So you need to run the same identical experiment, but without the factor that you are studying. This is called a control. So you need always to have a control so that you verify that without the control, there were no production. And that means that my result is because of that. If you are studying a growth of microbes and saying that they are depleting some chemical, run it without the microbes, see, is there a depletion or not? If there's no, that means that the drop is only because of the microbes that you put, and so on. This is very important that you not forget when you're doing your experiments. Yes, Halima. Yes, go ahead, Halima.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, in the method, I believe that you have explained the methodology of randomized control trial or case control, whatever, like any study that has an intervention. Now, what's your advice about the methodology that we are using for the qualitative study, like observational study, that we have no intervention?
Well, can you repeat the question, because I didn't catch it? You are speaking about what kind of study?
Like observational study, where I would like just to interview a group of people and give them a questionnaire and take their opinions about certain topic. So in the methodology, what do you advise? I mean, because you mentioned here, do not forget to present the control samples. Now, if we don't have two samples, we have only one group of people that we are studying. We don't have any intervention to compare between two groups. So this is my main question. Did you get the question?
Yeah. Of course, I was referring to experimental lab experiments. But yeah, those surveys, well, to be honest, I don't do much of them. So I may not be the right person to ask. But what I can think of right now is that if you want to test something, you need to put some kind of, in your samples, some kind of people which are neutral. So if you are measuring, for example, the effect of teaching on teachers, for example, then you put some who are not teachers, and then you can eliminate, and whatever is happening is because they are teachers, not because they are humans, for example.
Right.
I'm just thinking loudly, right?
Your advice is always to have people that are not having the main factor that I'm studying, so I'll be able to compare them. So I might have
exactly what you need. Yes, what you need is to say this happens because of this and only because of this, not because of something else. I'll give you an example. There was a study that showed that the percentage of, or what I'm trying to avoid here is the correlation versus causation. So what you want to confirm is the causation, not the correlation. So it may be increasing this results in increasing this, but it's not because of it, or not because of it only. So this is called causation. Causation is, that's the reason and only that. There's no other reason resulting in this. Correlation means things are happening together, may not be affecting each other. So there was a study once that shows that the number of people dying by drowning is correlated to the people eating ice cream. Now, the ice cream is not the reason for people dying in a swimming pool, but what happens is that people go to swimming pools in summer and they eat ice cream more in summer. So they go together, but they are not, there is a correlation between them, but there is no causation between them. So what you want to confirm here in your experiment is this increase is because of that and not because of anything else. So what you need is to run the experiment without that factor and see that there is no change, then only you can verify that this change is because of that factor.
Absolutely, that was very helpful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, this is something that is really important that you should avoid. Plagiarism is a major problem that may hinder your entire career and actually can destroy your entire career. You should always avoid it. And I must tell you that it is easily detected. Any journal, when you send a paper to, they will take it through some kind of authentication system, and they will realize whether there are some kind of plagiarism or not. Although it is very easily detected, it is easily avoided. All you need to do is to cite where you got your information from. And in this case, you can put the information, but cite it. Now, there is differences between people in the art field and in the science field. Although I see people very particular about the wordings, even in science, but in my opinion, I think the wordings is not what you own as a scientist. What I own as a scientist is the finding. So if someone states a finding and does not cite my paper, then there is here a plagiarism, because if you put a finding and you don't say that this was found in that reference, that means you are claiming it's yours. Even if you don't say it's mine, if you put finding without citation, that implies that it's your own finding, and this is plagiarism. However, the wordings may be important in literature more than science. So Shakespeare owns his style of writing. So if you quote from Shakespeare a quote, you must say this is a quote from Shakespeare, not from someone else. But my wordings, I don't think I will be particular about if someone else used my same wordings for something that is there. I mean, I use those wordings, it's not important. However, I must say that plagiarism systems, or those similarity report that appears, it goes through wordings, and try to avoid it, reword things as much as you can. And if you are citing a finding, you should always cite where did you get it from. I'll show you an example where I think the career of those people have been destroyed completely. But this is published information. It's not hidden. This is published. Everything when it comes to publication is there in front of anyone to see. This is a paper published in Journal of Environmental Engineering. I've deleted those for the sake of the authors, but it is public anyway. So here you can see under the name of the journal is the authors, and it is retracted. It says retracted in the journal, and there is the title of the paper that they published. So the one that I covered in black after retracted is the paper that has been published. Just read what is written underneath. This article has been retracted. Please see Al-Zuhair and article withdrawal policy. This article has been retracted at the request of the editor of the Journal of Environmental Chemical Engineering. The authors have admitted that the data in their GECA article were duplicated from the following 2 publications, which are authors' own. They are republishing their own data. And just look at what's happening. And there they put in the part I highlighted in black here are the articles that they reproduce their data from. The authors also plagiarized text and data from the following original articles, and they put it there. And then they say one of the conditions is to be novel and clear and not duplicate and so on. So you don't want to end up finding your name in something like this. So you have to be extremely careful and avoid reproducing your own data. And that comes back to our first discussion about the conferences as well. Okay, the result and discussion is the most important part of the paper, and the decision to accept or reject depends on it when it comes to the reviewers, of course. So I'm running out of time, so I'll go a little bit fast with this. You can include only your main finding, use supplementary data for less significant data, avoid redundancy, and keep results of same type within the same heading could help. So if you are representing results, not to repeat yourself and again and again and again, try to have subheadings for the topic that you want to discuss and put all the figures related to that subheading in there and speak about it, and that's it. You won't speak about it again. However, if you're going to scatter it around, you may need to reiterate what you mentioned before, and try to avoid that as much as possible. Figures can show trends better than tables. So if you can represent it in a graphical way, it's better than presenting it in a table. However, if you are presenting it in a graph, you cannot represent it in a table, and vice versa. So you should represent it only once. And if you have the chance to represent, if you want to speak about trend, it's better to represent it in figures. Table shows different factors that cannot be, if they are presented in a figure, they'll end up with very crowded figures. So you can put it in a table. Provide statistical analysis. You should always show your error bar to prove the reproducibility of the data. So you run the experiment in duplicates or triplicates, put the average value and show the error bar to convince the readers with the accuracy of your results. The captions and legends should be self-explanatory and enable the figure to stand alone, because this is important, because some search engines look for figures. So you can see the figure and you should read the caption and understand it without returning back to the journal. And that increases the citations again. The figure should be uncrowded. Don't overdo it so that people will not see what's happening. If you have 2 or more figures with the same axis, then always use the same scale so that they compare between them. You cannot have a scale of 10 and the other one is 100. They appear both of them as increasing significantly, while the one with the 10 is not increasing as the one with the 100. So keep them at the same scale, and that shows the difference between the two easily, visually. Because if you're gonna present a graph, you need a visual effect. If you lose the visual effect, what's the use of the graph? And always choose the right type of graph. Do you want to have a line graph? Do you want to have a bar graph? And all those need to be carefully chosen. This is important when you are speaking about results, because I've seen this with many students that they put their results, they dump them as if they are in a photo album. The figures, before you present any figure, you must introduce it. So the test was done to do this and this, and the results are shown in this. So you present the reader to the graph. The reader or she cannot suddenly see a graph. Why are you showing it? So you need to show why you are showing the graph, and then you show the graph. After you present the graph, you describe the trend, just what you see. You describe what people can see in the graph, as shown in the graph, increasing the concentration results in dropping the strength, whatever. So you explained it increases, then decreases. It reaches a maximum, then it drops. It reaches a plateau. All what you are saying, you describe it. Then you explain it. What is the reason you think behind those results? However, when you are explaining trends, please avoid speculations, because first of all, you will be asked to verify those speculations. And if you say because some intermediate is formed, the first thing a reviewer will do is to tell you, okay, measure the intermediate and confirm your speculation. Don't speculate. If you know, say what you know. Otherwise, no, it's okay. I have until 12:30, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'll try to finish so that I give a chance to anyone who want to ask. So I just want to go through those graphs very fast. So you describe the graph, you present the graph, you describe the trend. After the graph, you explain it with scientific finding and put citations for any reason. So if you say this is because the temperature results in this, who said that, who found that, you cite it, and or you reach a conclusion based on your results. And then you compare your results with previous literature. So your results compared to the others, is it higher, is it lower, is it equal, why and how, and so on. You must confirm the reproducibility of the data, I discussed that, and discuss the significance and the implications of those results. Avoid statement that goes beyond the result support, which is what I've just mentioned, the speculations. Avoid non-specific expressions and the speculations on possible interpretations. The conclusions start very strongly where the aim achieved, very strong statement. It was found that this. What does your work add to knowledge? What's the addition to knowledge that come up from this work? Do not include results or copy from abstracts. They should not be another abstract. You don't put result. You do not include your results, just the main conclusions. Discuss the significance and applications and suggest future work. You open the door for more work to be done. So what is still to be done in that sense? References, try not to include too many references. Avoid excessive self-citations. Now the self-citations will reflect bad on your paper on one hand. Sometimes it's inevitable. You need to put your old work, especially if you are building on a previous one, but don't overdo it, because if I get the chance to show you your portfolio or the portfolio on Scopus, the self-citation is usually you can exclude, and that shows how much you've cited yourself. So you don't want to be looked at as a person who only cites himself and nobody else cite him or her work. So try to avoid it as much as possible. Follow the journal's guidelines when it comes to the format of the references. Otherwise, it will be rejected because of that. You can use reference managers like EndNote, which can help you to do the format automatically. So when you want to publish, you should ask yourself, where should I go? These are the different factors affecting or measuring the quality of the journals. The impact factor is one of the main ones. The impact factor 5 is extended for 5 years. Article influence score, AIS, impact per publications, and I put the definitions of them. You can just search those definitions out. The most common ones are the site score and the SCImago journal ranking. These are the two major quality measurement of journals, but you notice that those factors or those indices, they depend mainly on how much citations gathered in the journal, in the particular journal. So they don't measure basically the quality of the journal, but the citations that this journal has attracted. So when it comes to choosing a journal, these, in my opinion, are more relevant than the impact factor. The topic and journal coverage, you're gonna check how spread this journal is, the readerships of it. Is this readership the one that you are aiming and tackling or not? The length of time from the submission to publication, I'll show you now how you can measure that. The journal quality and reputation. You need to look into the editors. Are they reputed editors, known in the field? The reputation of the journal in the field, is it one of those which is well known? And basically the reputation of the editors plays a major part here. Avoid applying for avoid paying for publication, because it always raises concern and conflict of interest. Now this is a problem, or this is a debate I also have with people, where they say online publications attract more citations. And that's true. I totally agree that open publish open journal papers, they attract more citations. However, I myself find it difficult to accept paying for publishing. There is always an element of conflict of interest that I cannot ignore. And there's always a question I ask myself, if I submitted it to a journal without publication, will it be treated the same? Will it be published or not? These kinds of questions is in the mind of anyone who publishes in an open public journal. And the reason when you pay, there is a conflict of interest that you cannot ignore, and paying for your publication. So you demand treatment different than if you don't pay. In my opinion, you should either be being paid for publishing or you publish for free. But to pay for publishing, I may not agree with completely, although many people are advocating for these kinds of publications, and they can give you all sorts of reasons, and they are all valid. However, in my opinion, I agree with all those reasons, but still this element of conflict of interest is always something difficult for me to swallow, and I try my best to avoid paying for any publication I have. The Elsevier has a service which is called Journal Finder, and that's, you can find it in this web page, journalfinder.elsevier.com. And in this case, you can have different information. So you can, you put here the title of your paper, let me get my glasses, it's a little bit small. So the title of the paper, just 1 second. Yeah, the abstract, you put the keywords and the field match. This field match is important because when you build your portfolio, you need your field match to be within the field that you want. So you choose the field that you want to focus all your publications on. And after you do that, you click on Define Journal, and it will give you something like what you see on the right there. And you can now sort them according to different things: best match, a journal name, site score, impact factor, acceptance rate. So acceptance rate refers to how easy it is for the reviewers and the editors to accept, and the time for first decision and time for second decision. So that gives you also an average of how fast they do their job. So you don't want a journal that takes very long time for them to review. So if you look at a new biotechnology here, there are 3 weeks only to give their first decision. That's their average. So however, the time for publication takes much longer time. Their acceptance rate is 12%, and while chemical engineering, research and design, the acceptance rate is 23%, and you can see that what is the impact factors and so on. So you make a decision based on that. Once you choose your journal, you go to the guide for author and read this guide for author carefully, because if there is any difference in the, or not following exactly what is the guide of author says, it may be rejected because of that. So follow them carefully, read them carefully, and then follow the instructions carefully. Revise your submission before submitting. Now, you are, as a researcher, you should be the one who most concerned about the quality of your publication. I'm putting a caricature here where a student written a paper, submitted to the supervisor, returned it back to her with some comments. She's done it, returned back to her for more comments, and then she get really frustrated. She submitted to them, and the advisor or the manager is sick of reading it, and he will just accept it. This kind of approach should be avoided. You should be more concerned than anyone else about the quality of your paper. So don't say, let me write anything and I'll pass it to my supervisor and he or she will read it and correct it for me. This is not the right way to do it. Try to make the best first draft, and then you can pass it to the to your supervisor or your co-authors and so on. So revise the paper clearly. No one should be more concerned about the quality than you are. Use correct English. If your English is poor, seek help. And the university here has an English editor service in the library where you can send your papers, and a professional or a native English speaker will read your paper and will comment on your English. And that's fine, and that enhances the chances of publication. Always good to ask someone outside your field to read it, so that, because sometimes people in the field, they understand it even if it is not well written, because they know it. But if you ask someone from outside the field to read it, he or she can always give you some feedback that you may not get from people in the field. I'm just going a little bit fast with this. Editors of good journals receive numerous submissions and will have no time to review them all carefully. So should the editor find anything she does not like, the paper will be immediately rejected. So actually the editors, when they receive papers, they look for reasons to reject. So don't give the editors any reason to reject your paper, because they will immediately reject it once they find anything that they didn't like in the paper. So when asked to suggest reviewers, some journals, they ask you to suggest 5 reviewers or 3 reviewers or whatever. Do not, never suggest a person you published with, because they have a system in the journal to check for that. And should they find it, they will reject your publication immediately. Try also to avoid people from your region, because the editor will say, why this guy is putting people from his or her region? That means he may know them or whatever. So try to avoid that as much as possible. Select some from authors of good papers you cited. Now you cited many papers. If you do not include any one of them in your suggested reviewers, the editor may also question that. He's citing all those good papers. Why is he or she avoiding selecting the authors of those journals as reviewers? Again, that may be a reason to reject. They will not give you a reason. They will say rejected directly, but those are the reasons. They have flags that automatically appears for the editor when you do something like this. Try to avoid self-citations as much as you can, as I mentioned. Have at least more than 70% of your references to be within the past 3 years. Now, I personally do not agree with this, but I do it to avoid any reason of rejection. The reason why I don't agree with this, because it makes me cite people who cite the original paper, which is not correct. I should cite the original paper. To avoid that, I cite both, but that still reduces the percentage of new papers. So you need to eliminate those old papers. The reason why the reviewers or the authors, editors look into this, because they want to easily determine that this is a new field of research. But that should not be the reason. I mean, you should verify whether this is cutting edge or not, based on the quality of the work, not based on the references. But to avoid any reason for rejection, try to put recent papers. So if you find a reference which is old, try to find someone who cited that reference and cite the new one. Again, this is wrong, but that's one way to avoid being rejected because of that. In my opinion, I'm doing it, but I don't agree on this completely. Cite more from the journals you are applying to. This is again something that you may do. It is not proper, but it may convince the editor to accept sending your paper. So it's a tricky way to get it through the editor, because editors would like to see their papers of their journals being cited. So if your paper cite papers from the journal, that may be tempting to the editor to accept it and send it for reviewing. This is not correct, but you may end up doing it for the sake of getting it through the editor. So the last 2 points that I mentioned, if you can avoid, avoid. However, I must admit that I do those tricks sometimes. Okay, you should follow the author's guidelines carefully. The paper publishing reviewing process goes through this. You submit it, the editor may reject it immediately or send it for refereeing. The referees may reject it, or they can ask for more revision. After the revision, they may reject it or ask for even more revision, and it keeps on going until they are convinced and they accept it. At any stage of those, they can reject it. And you can see that the chances of acceptance is way much less than the chances of rejection. And that's what you try to avoid in order to get your paper published. This is not what you need to go through. It's not that you want to sneak between all the reviewers in order to run with your paper and get it published. You need to have a sound, strong paper that stands in front of all those people who are standing in front of its publication and close all possible doors for rejection. So what reviewers look at, you can see the graph here. We have two axes, the technical quality and novelty. If you have high technical quality and high novelty, you have high chances of being accepted. If you have high novelty with low technical quality, you have a good chance. And if you have high technical quality with low novelty, you still may have a chance. But if you lack both, it's deemed to be rejected. They say good work published badly have low chances of publication. Bad work presented nicely have low chances of being published. Good work with good presentation has a good chance of being published, and bad work with bad presentation is deemed to be rejected. So you should look into the importance, novelty, clarity, and good presentation. All those are elements for your paper to be accepted. The photo here is not what you want your paper to end up with after the several reviewing. What I mean here is that you need to comply as much as possible with the reviewer's comment, but not on the expense of the quality of your paper. So you should not accept to lower the quality of your paper to satisfy the reviewer's demands, but as much as possible, comply with what they want. Always view this chance as a way to improve your paper. Don't look at it negatively. Don't be defensive. Don't say those people do not understand what they're talking about. Look at it positively, read it carefully, and try to improve the paper. Just consider it as a free review for your paper. And people spend time to review it, give you comments, cherish that, and improve your paper accordingly. Do not attempt to respond before discussing with the co-authors. Read carefully all the reviewers' comments. Agree with the co-authors on what you want, how you want to respond, and then respond. Always stand with what you think is better for your paper. You do not compromise what you think is right, and you can always argue back and say that I do not agree with the reviewers at this point, and I prefer to keep it as is. However, you should always be polite, assertive, but polite. So don't say you don't know what you're talking about, better read more about this before commenting on my paper. All these kinds of things should be avoided. Try to be assertive, however polite, and stand for what you think is correct. You do not have to agree with all comments raised by the reviewers. However, if you disagree, then clearly and politely explain why you disagree. However, as much as possible, comply with the reviewer's comments and revise the paper accordingly. So if it doesn't really matter, you don't totally agree, but you don't mind doing it, better to do it and avoid argument with the reviewers. Because at the end of the day, if the reviewer is rejected, their editor cannot do anything. He's going to reject it. So better to get the approval from the reviewers, sorry. So after you've read the comments, prepare clear, itemized reply to every single comment of the reviewers. Provide full explanation. What did you do to attend it? Where it is in the paper? And as I mentioned, be assertive but polite. Once you publish your paper, you need to promote for it. So you need to increase the research articles and make them challenging for researchers to keep up with their literature, because the volume of research publications is huge. You don't want your paper to fall through the cracks and not being noticed. So you can use conferences, as I mentioned earlier, to attract attention to your work. You can use institutional communication channels, the webpage of the institution, news feeds of the institution, newsletters. Always try those to promote your work. Prepare audio slides that Elsevier and most publishing houses provide that. Take advantage of this and mention it. Keep your profiles up to date with your latest publications. Use social media like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Mendeley, all those to promote your work. I don't know if Philip is here. Philip has brought my attention to something called Codus Grow or Grow Codus, and it's another platform that you can also promote your work in. The search engine optimization, which is I mentioned before, it's a way to increase the attention towards your paper, and I'll just go a little bit fast with this. These are all active links. I wanted to open them to show them to you, but I will not have the time to do so. But Scopus, Pablo's, or ID, and
sorry for interrupting. I don't think Zoom will automatically close, so don't worry. It will not close at 12:30 exactly. You can take a few extra minutes if you wish to. It's okay.
Yeah, but I think it's going to take time to open all of them and go through them. So
yeah, I just want to keep the note because
thank you very much. I just want to keep a few minutes if anyone wants to ask. So, but anyway, I mean, if you want, you can always communicate with me. I can show you those and how they work and what data they have. But let me just show you Scopus just as one of them, and because it shows the portfolio, and I want to show you what is the portfolio in Scopus looks like. So I put here my my page, and this is a new look of Scopus. They just updated it. So it shows, first thing, how many papers you published, what is your total citations, and what's your H index. This shows your publication per year and the growth of your citations. They have all the publications here, and you can have the arrangement based on all this, based on how many, the one that is most cited first. If you look at something here called Analyze Author Output, it gives you more information about the author. So it shows what are the fields that you published in. This is year publication per year, the type, whether they are articles or other types, the subjects that you publish in, which is here. Actually, wherever you click here, it will be larger here. Who are your co-authors, your H index, citations. There is also a link here to SciVal, which gives you further information about the author and his or her output. However, I will move to the publication again. Okay. So in summary, you should find, for your paper to be published in a good journal, you must have a well-designed original study to write about. Select an appropriate journal, write clearly and make your story interesting. Be objective, and good editors and reviewers will be objective about your work. Highlight the addition to science and the significance of the results. Respond carefully to the referees' comments and positively as much as possible. Most importantly, to have a good publication, you need a good work. Advices: read as many papers and learn from good, well-written ones. Improve your English by reading as much as you can. The more you read, the better you write. Learn to accept rejection and criticism, because you're going to hear a lot, and always try to look positively into those and take them as a gift rather than a criticism. Become a reviewer early in your career, because that gives you a chance to get involved into finding the most cutting edge research, the most recent, and it will help you to read more papers and understand how reviewers think. Quality, not quantity, is everything. Thank you very much, and good luck with your next publication. So I think I have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much, Professor, for this amazing and informative presentation. Thank you for your valuable time. So do we have some time for questions? I think we do have some questions.
Yes, please.
Okay, someone is asking, is there any way we can send our research paper to be checked before sending it out to the journal?
Check, sorry, again, what is this?
Is there any way that we can send our research paper to be checked before sending it out to the journal?
Yeah, definitely. As I mentioned, usually this comes after you and your co-authors agree on the paper and what is in it and how to present it. At that stage, you can send it to formal editing service, and that's freely provided by the library. So you can send your paper there. A native English speaker will look at it. Most of the comments will be English corrections, grammar, and so on. However, they try to send it to people more closely to your field. So you may also find some technical advices from the reviewer, and that you can do it before sending to reviewing. And I advise every student to take advantage of that service because it really changes the quality of the presentation.
Thank you. Another question, do we have any experts in the university that will help us to improve our data representation and figures?
I don't know whether we have people specialized in that, but the more you work on research, the more you can get skills on how to present better. There are some literature about that, but people in the university to correct for you the way that you present a graph or table, I don't think we have. But definitely you need to work into this to improve your skills in that. And there are some sources that you can refer to that will help you to give you some guidelines on how to do it. And those are available even in Elsevier. Elsevier have some training courses online, and some of them on how to better present your figures. So yes, you can refer to those, but in the university, I'm not aware of anyone.
Thank you, Professor. Another question is, do the previous rejections affect the chance of getting the paper accepted in other journals as they are a shared system?
They should not, and I don't think the journals will refer to other reviews or other reviewers reports from another journal unless if you submit it again to the same journal, and usually you may be allowed to resubmit to the same journal based on recommendation from the editor. So usually the editor either tell you that's it, you cannot resubmit it again, or you are allowed to make the correction and resubmit again. The resubmission is an extreme case of major revisions. So I will tell you, do all those and resubmit it again. In this case, when you resubmit, you have to specify the manuscript number of the previous submission. So you say it was submitted under that number. Other than that, I don't think it should affect. So you don't need, in other words, to respond to reviewers' comments if you are submitting to another journal. There is no need for that. The itemized replies for reviewers' comments are needed if you are submitting back to the same journal. You need to clearly say, how did you address the comments of the reviewers? But if you are submitting to another journal, you don't need to do that.
Thank you, Professor. We have a lot of comments thanking you for your time and the informative presentation, so thanks for that. We have a question from Professor Ali from College of Education, but I didn't get the question. He said question regarding the discussion and interpretation part. So
yeah, I think you want to ask about the point that I said in the discussion there is interpretation. I don't know if that's the question. If he's still around, he can clarify. But what I said is that you try, when you interpret your data, try to avoid speculative results. So you don't go and say, this could be because of this and that. The immediate response of a reviewer will be prove it. Do the experiment and prove it. So rather than doing that, do the experiment and prove it, and then you have a proof to what you say, rather than speculating without any proof. Do that test, make the confirmation, and then you can firmly say what is the reason for whatever, rather than I think it's because of this and that. I don't know if that answered him.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think we might end it here. We are at 12:30 now, but thank you so much. We'll stop the recording here, and please do not forget to fill the feedback form. Your feedback is very important to us, and also please watch the recording on the YouTube channel. So we will upload it in a few hours, so you can take notes if you wish to. Thank you so much, Professor Sulaiman, for your notes.
Thank you very much. I would just like to apologize for a little bit going fast at the end, but I just was running out of time, and there are so many things that I want to say, and the time was not enough, so I had to rush it a little bit. However, if anyone needs to ask about anything of the points that I rushed into at the end, please feel free to contact me, and I'll be more than glad to discuss it in more details.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you.
Thank you very much.